strong.
Hello all and welcome back to the channel. I am Mastered Gaming and I present to you here the GraveDigger-Stamina necromancer-PvP build for the Stonethorn patch, which is currently in PTS and will be released on console at a later date. So let's get right into the build. Today we are running a Nord with 64 points into stamina. This just drives up our max stamina count just that extra little bit more by having more points, and passively as a Nord we get more health anyway, so points into health are not necessary. We also are running the Warrior Mundus Stone because we're running full Divine's armor that I will show you later. That adds an extra 389 weapon damage, and we're running the Artaeum Takeaway Broth Gold Food, increasing our max health by 2,835, health recovery by 346, and our max stamina by 2,625, as well as our increase in stam recovery by 288. Now, if we go back to our stats, we're running quite a nice setup here. We've got 12k max magicka, which is decent as our buffs are max mag. We have 18k max health, I'm just rounding that up, but in PvP scenarios this goes up to about 21 to 22k. We have 32k maximum stamina, so we have quite a bit of base damage, as well as a high count for our resources. We have 643 mag recovery, 837 health recovery, which will be driven up even further, as I will explain in the build later. And we're running quite a nice amount of weapon damage, sitting at 4.2k, with 30% weapon critical. We're currently sitting at 17k resistances on both spell and physical. And we currently have 2,800 critical resistance. Now, let's move on to the gear. We're running a New Moon's Maul to start off with. In Nirnhound, this just means that our New Moon's Acolyte is active on our front bar, and we have quite a high weapon damage count. Having it Nirnhound adds an extra 300 weapon damage, and having it Golded out adds another 200 from the difference to purple, meaning that having it in Nirnhound and Gold really is essential. So if you're looking for material efficiency, I would recommend golding out your weapon first. We're running double dot poisons. I'm running crown ones, but you can craft versions that are the exact same at no extra cost. It doesn't cost anything more. You can run the alchemy version of these and they still hit just as hard. On our back bar we are running a infused Master's Perfected Bow with a weapon damage enchant, increasing our weapon and spell damage by 452 for 5 seconds. This is good as it drives our weapon and spell damage count even higher. Infused because it means that anytime we do an attack with this weapon, we will basically have the enchantment up, which is a nice bonus to have that 100% uptime of our weapon and spell damage glyph. I chose the Perfected Master's Bow because of the extra weapon damage it has, so our Poison Inject, which I will show you later, has an extra bit of weapon damage on it, and our 2-piece increases our weapon damage by 330 against targets affected by my Poison Arrow. Poison Arrow can be morphed into Poison Injection. That is what we're running. Next up we have a medium Troll King Mask in Divines with a max stamina enchant. Troll King adds 4% healing done, and when you heal yourself or an ally, if they are still below 50% health, their health recovery is increased by 925 for 10 seconds. This means that our health can shoot right back up to the top with no problem, because our heals are gradual rather than burst. We're running a heavy Shacklebreaker Cuirass. Now I chose Shacklebreaker for my second set because of the stats that it gives. It gives an extra stam recovery, it gives magicka recovery, it gives weapon and spell damage, and for the 5th piece, increases our resources of stam and mag by 2k each. Now this is quite a large amount. It means that we're not sitting at the base 27k that a lot of stam builds run nowadays. We're having a lot higher stamina, and we're also maintaining our high weapon and spell damage, so Shacklebreaker is a nice set. In this build we are running 2 heavy pieces, so I have the heavy on the chest and I have the heavy on the legs, also in Shacklebreaker in full Divines. We're also running the Troll King's Arm Cops, again in Divines. We're trying to maintain the 5 medium 2 heavy to drive our resistances up higher while also maintaining our 5-piece. And as you can see, for the rest of the armour, we do have Shacklebreaker. So Shacklebreaker on the body with 2 heavy pieces, will get your nice setup all sorted. Now for our jewellery. To complete our New Moon's Acolyte set, we are running 3 pieces of New Moon's jewellery. 2 of the pieces are infused with weapon damage glyphs, and our 3rd piece is in Robust to drive our maximum stamina count a little bit higher, while also allowing us to have a weapon damage enchant, making our weapon damage even higher. Now let's move on to the skills. On our front bar we're running Dizzying Swing. I know a lot of stand builds run this, but I'm yet to find a very good competitor to Dizzying Swing. An alternative could be Critical Rush, as this ability means that you've got basically a 100% chance of hitting them, and it tracks them. However, I do believe it is quite toxic, and it's quite difficult to get used to the camera angle shifting, so Dizzying Swing is a safer bet. And we know it works, as from the evidence of previous builds and other YouTubers who use this in their builds. Now, secondly, we have our main burst. We have the Blighted Blast Bones. Now, this ability costs stamina, and you summon a skeleton that darts right at the enemy. Now, I'm sure you're all aware of what it does, but just in case you don't, it runs after its target and explodes when it gets close to them, dealing 16.3k disease damage to all enemies nearby, and it applies Major Defile to them. Major Defile reduces their healing received and health recovery by 30%, meaning it almost makes it impossible to heal against our Stamina Necromancer. And it also creates a Corpse on Death, which we will see synergizes with our other skills very nicely. Of course, because we're running two-handed, we're going to be running Executioner, just so we can finish off the enemy and make it so that we're able to kill them nice and easily. Next up we have Rally. Rally is our main source of major brutality, however it's also very nice to have the minor endurance to increase our stam recovery by 10%, and the heal from it scales up to 300% for every second that the effect is active. The duration of Rally is 20 seconds, but if you pop the heal at any time from the start of it to the end, you will get a scaled up heal based on the amount of time that it has been up for, meaning you can range anywhere between an 8k PvP heal to a 16k PvP heal, depending on how you work it. Now next up we're running Detonating Siphon. Now a lot of people don't run Detonating Siphon, I personally do. I use Detonating Siphon because if you're getting close to the enemy, you can deal an extra dot to them. As you can see, this does 21,000 of disease damage over 12 seconds. Translate this into PvP, this goes into about 11k to 12k disease damage over 12 seconds, averaging about 1,000 disease damage every second. Plus as well, when the effect ends, the corpse explodes, dealing, translate this into PvP, a 4k disease damage to the enemy. Now also, the other reason I'm running this is because while slotted, it increases your damage done by 3%. This is quite nice. This cannot scale, so it's a set 3%, but it also means that your damage is driven up just by having this damage booster on. Now next up, of course, we have the Dawnbreaker of Smiting. This stun is amazing, it doesn't cost much, and the 16k to physical damage to enemies in front of you with the extra dot on the end is not something I'm going to complain about. Now we're going to work backwards this time. On the back bar we have the Pestilent Colossus. I only chose this one on my back bar purely because having a necromancer ability increases resources and damage done, but also Pestilent Colossus is good if you feel like you're facing a lot of AoE that you need to do, so if there's multiple enemies you slap down the Colossus rather than your very small narrow cone of Dawnbreaker. Next up on our 5th ability we have Mortal Coil. Mortal Coil is a very nice heal, but it's very gradual, which basically means it can force our Troll King to proc. This heal will heal us for 9k over 12 seconds in PvP. This 9k means that we're able to have a heal that goes on for a long time and will trigger our Troll King into giving us more recovery, essentially making it look like we have a lot of health coming back. Plus as well, we also get Stamina Sustain for having this on a corpse, and it increases your healing done by 3%. Next up we have Spirit Guardian. Now Spirit Guardian is very nice. I don't really use it for the heal, but personally I use it for the fact that when you have it active, 10% of the damage you take is transferred to the spirit instead. Now the spirit takes a lot of damage away from you, which is very nice. It means that you're taking 10% less damage instead, basically making you a lot more tankier. Now unbuffed, as you can see, I have a Vigor tooltip of 16.4k. Fully buffed up, this could scale up from anywhere between 16 to 20k over 4 seconds. Vigor's nice to have just as a little burst heal, but it's not your main source of healing, so keep that up as much as you can, but don't rely on it solely, as you should be relying on your Mortal Coil and your Rally as your heals. Next up we have our resistance booster, Beckoning Armour. Now some people run Summoner's Armour, I personally run Beckoning, because not only does it increase our resistances, but if we're going up against those pesky snipe stackers or long range enemies, it will pull them towards us, giving our skeleton and blast bones less distance to travel and making it so that they're in wrecking blow distance. And finally, the main reason that we are running Masters, the poison injection. Now not only does this serve as a trigger for our Master's bow, but it also serves as an execute to enemies under 50% health, and puts quite a strong dot onto the enemy that puts a little bit more pressure on them. Now, let's move on to the champion points. We are running 20 points into Warlord in the Tower Mundus. Next up in the Lover, we have 100 in Mooncalf to drive our stand recovery. We have 50 points into Tenacity to increase our heavy attack restores. And we have 40 points into Healthy just to increase our health recovery a little bit. We have 50 points into Tumbling, and we have 10 points into Shadow Ward to reduce the cost of block, but blocking is not that much of a necessity with this build, as we aim to kill the enemy before we need to actually block. Plus, having more points into Healthy and Tumbling mean that we can get out of those situations very easily. Next up we have 20 points into Blessed. 20 points is quite a bit, but however that sacrifice is worth it because that extra 5% healing done is very important when it comes to making yourself very survivable. As we are not running heavy armor, this Blessed champion point will help us out a lot. Next up we have 70 points into Master at Arms. Now Master at Arms is very good as all of our attacks are direct damage, but we have some damage over times, as you will see what points we have put in to help that very shortly. We have 35 points into Thaumaturge to help said damage over time attacks increase their damage by 15% just by having 35 points in. Next up we have 65 points into Precise Strikes just to make it so that our crit heals and our crit damage is very strong and is not affected by anything else, so we have that raw damage and raw healing coming from Precise Strikes. Next up we have Piercing to increase our physical penetration. Mixed in with our Maul, we are going through 20% of their resistances, as well as going through another 3.3k of them, making it so that our damage is driven up just that much more, making them not be able to resist as much of our damage we are doing. Next up we have Mighty. We have 40 points into Mighty, increasing our physical, poison and disease damage by 9.6%. All of our attacks are physical, poison and disease damage, so 40 points in this is quite modest. Now next up for the Steed, we have 60 points into Ironclad. We have 70 points into Resistant because we're not running any impenetrable gear, so our critical resistance is quite low. However, as of the Greymore patch, we do have a base critical resistance of 1350, meaning we can put points into Resistant to drive that number even higher, allowing us to run more versatile builds. Next up we have 50 points into Hardy and Elemental Defender, but only 40 into Thick Skinned to make room for more points in Resistant and Ironclad. And we have no points into the Lord Mundus. So that is it for the build. I will just slowly demonstrate what I do for a rotation. As you can see, there are some mud crabs here. I know it's not the most professional way, but it is the way I'm going to demonstrate. So let's just say I'm going into a duel with this mud crab. Now as you can see, this mud crab is quite scared of me, and it has every right, so I do look pretty scary. Now every time I go into a duel, I pre-buff with my Rally. I then move on to my back bar with Spirit Bender and my Beckoning Armour. And then I start off the fight with a Poison Inject, and then a Blast Bones, and then D-Swing. And if that doesn't kill them, you finish them off with an Execute. It's really that simple. This build has so much raw damage that you really are able to just do a simple rotation and you can kill them. If they don't die, then you've also got the detonating siphon for extra sustain, and you've got mortal coil for extra health. The healing is crazy from this, and mixed with our Arteum takeaway broth, we do have very high numbers of resources, so we can keep up those abilities, making our sustain and our healing very, very strong. Now that is it for the build. I'm going to put the character sheet back up on there. I'm actually going to buff up so you can see it. As you can see, our weapon damage got up to 4.9k with 1.4k stamina recovery. I think these stats are very nice, and I think you guys will enjoy this build in open world as well as battlegrounds and dueling with your friends. That is it for the build, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in. Please give a shout out to my helper who I had, not AK. Sadly there was no footage as the footage wasn't recorded properly, so I had to cut it from this video, but I'm not going to skimp out on thanking him for his help. Please do be sure to drop a like and subscribe. It means a lot. It supports the channel, means that I know that you guys are enjoying my content. Just wanted to say a massive thank you for helping me hit 550 views on my second ever video. It means a lot. Please hit the comment section to make sure that you ask any questions about this build and I can answer them in due time without any hesitation. And that's me signing off, guys. Thank you very much, and I'll catch you guys in the next build video, which I'm sure you will all enjoy just as much as this one. Thank you very much.